big question, what next for Evergrande?
Yes, so Evergrande sort of somehow kicking the can down the road, even though we know that a restructuring is on its way. It does seem unavoidable that there are going to be haircuts for both the onshore and offshore bonds. So really this delay doesn't sort of move the needle. But what holders of the notes will be looking to now is any kind of details that come from that risk management committee, which is of course assessing just how much debt Evergrande has. And outside of, I think, the sort of Evergrande complex, market focus has sort of shifted to some of the other names, particularly the stronger names. And that's partly because many of the losses that investors have taken on Evergrande itself will have sort of been contained to 2021. So as we look to sort of the rest of this year, we are focused on, for example, Country Garden, which saw its notes tumble to record lows yesterday after reports of a pooled convertible bond deal. And that's actually impacting many of the other stronger names in the property sector, dragging down some of their dollar bonds. And that is particularly worrying for investors that are looking at contagion and this idea that good credits will be dragged down even with the bad.
When you talk about contagion, Rebecca, you have to look at local government and how much money they get from land sales. And, we did see property stocks take a hit because these state banks are, unsurprisingly, rather hesitant to lend to local government financing vehicles. Now, how will curbing that affect this crisis in property in China?
Absolutely. I think as we go into this year, we're going to see many more of these sort of spillover effects to the lenders, to the creditors, and to that network of suppliers, all the other folks outside of the property firms themselves. Now, when it comes to these at least five banks limiting their loans to local government financing vehicles, on the one hand, that makes sense. LGFEs, there are some very, very risky ones out there. Analysts have been warning of the first ever public bond default on an LGFE for several years now. It could come, of course, this year. But it will be quite painful for local governments because we know that local SOEs and LGFEs have been played a big role in supporting the property industry through this crisis, and particularly supporting local governments. Local governments rely on their land bank sales in order to produce lots and lots of its financing. So any kind of step down in local government financing vehicles or local SOEs' capacity to continue bolstering sales will, of course, have quite a serious impact for local governments. And just to give you a bit of a sense here, in November, more than 80% of Shenzhen's land bank sales came from LGFEs.